Okay, so you've done it. You have navigated the choppy waters of B2, and you've landed firmly on C1. And seriously, that is a massive accomplishment.
It really is.
You've achieved what's called operational proficiency in English, which means you can handle pretty much any professional or social situation. Congratulations are absolutely in order.
But that's the starting line, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're fluent, you can communicate your ideas, you've mastered the 12 basic tenses. You're not struggling with simple vocabulary or basic sentence structures anymore.
No.
But there's this feeling, a feeling that creeps in right about now, a sense of stagnation.
That wall, that ceiling, it's a completely common feeling at this level.
It is.
You realize there's this invisible barrier between being fluent and sounding, well, truly exceptional, or having that undeniable linguistic sophistication that makes people stop and listen.
The kind of precision a native expert would use in a high-stakes discussion. And that's where we are today. We're moving past simple communication. Our mission, really, is explicitly for the advanced learner who is ready to dissect the language.
To really get under the hood.
Exactly. Moving beyond the standard curriculum to achieve total precision and, frankly, breathtaking elegance in your output. We are focusing on structures, not just words.
And that's such an important distinction. We're not talking about just jamming another 1,000 nouns onto a flashcard deck. This deep dive is about mastering what we're calling the grammatical architecture of the language. It's structural engineering, not interior decorating.
I think that architecture metaphor is perfect because C1 mastery isn't about more material. It's about the blueprint. It's understanding the underlying structural framework that lets you build these custom complex sentences. Structures that are capable of expressing incredibly nuanced thoughts with impeccable clarity and real authority.
So we're going to spend the next 30 minutes or so breaking down that C1 blueprint. We'll be moving from the microscopic detail of, say, verb choice all the way up to the macroscopic structure of the sentence.
Okay.
We will be exploring these powerful rhetorical tools that let you actively manipulate sentences for emphasis. That includes things like sophisticated tense sequencing, the strategic use of inversion and cleft sentences to put the spotlight exactly where you want it.
Which is so powerful.
And the cornerstone of all academic writing, nominalization.
And we will definitely drill down into the elements that distinguish a truly advanced user. We're talking about the structures that allow you to condense these long, verbose clauses for conciseness and to select that precise shade of meaning required for, those professional, scientific, or highly academic settings.
Yeah.
This is where you move from speaking correct English to speaking truly compelling English.
Let's start with the absolute heart of the sentence. The verb. We all know the standard 12 tenses, but at the C1 level, just knowing them isn't enough. Not even close. We have to leverage their maximum potential for showing these incredibly specific and often really subtle time relationships.
That's where the nuance lives, right? A perfect place to start is revisiting the present perfect continuous.
Okay.
Most learners are very comfortable using it for actions that started in the past and are still ongoing. That textbook use case like, I've been working on this difficult proposal since early morning.
Standard, necessary, we get it.
Right. But the truly C1, sophisticated application, the one that really elevates your understanding, is using the tense when the action has just finished.
Okay.
And the result is immediate, visible proof right now in the present moment. It creates this seamless verbal cause and effect relationship that other tenses just can't quite capture.
So it's about the evidence that's left behind.
It's all about the evidence.
Yeah.
Think about the practical application. We're talking about connecting that recent past duration directly to the current physical or sensory reality. The activity itself might be over, but the consequence is, well, it's undeniable and observable.
Okay, so if you walk into a room, you observe something, and that observation forces your hand to use the continuous.
Precisely.
So if you see a colleague and they're rubbing their eyes and yawning, you instantly connect that visible consequence to a recent duration of activity. You might ask, you look absolutely exhausted. Have you been working on that coding project all night?
Yes, exactly. The physical appearance, that visible result, is what mandates the tense choice.
Right.
Or, to use a sensory example, the air in the apartment feels incredibly warm and humid because the technician has been running the industrial dehumidifier for 4 hours.
The running is done or maybe just stopped.
But the atmospheric proof is the current reality. It's a very powerful, very economical way to explain a present condition by highlighting the duration of the past effort that caused it.
I think the key difference here is that a lower-level speaker might simply say, she baked bread and now it smells good.
Yeah.
Two separate facts. But the C1 speaker integrates the cause and effect structurally. They use the duration to explain the richness of the result. The kitchen smells absolutely fantastic because she has been baking bread all afternoon.
It's an integrated observation, not two separate sentences. That's the leap.
Okay, so moving beyond the present, C1 proficiency demands absolute clarity when you're narrating complex historical events or reporting sequences of actions.
Complex timelines.
Exactly. We must have a fluent command of the past perfect simple versus the continuous here.
Yeah, this is a big one.
So the simple past perfect, as we know, is for an action that was completely finished before a second past action happened. It establishes a crystal clear chronology, for instance, in like a rescue narrative. By the time the search party finally reached the summit, the blizzard had already started.
Clear. Event A, blizzard starting, predated Event B, their arrival.
Yeah.
Sequential, finished actions. Very clean. Now, the past perfect continuous. It operates differently. Yeah. It's not just about chronology. It's about emphasis. It stresses the duration, the ongoing, maybe even the difficult nature of an activity that was happening right up to, or was maybe even interrupted by, that next past moment.
It adds context.
It adds crucial context and, I'd say, rhetorical weight.
I think the rhetorical weight is the key insight. The simple past perfect tells us what happened. The continuous tells us how hard or how long they were trying.
Yes.
Consider a policy example. The committee finally approved the new policy after they had been debating the funding issues for 6 months.
That had been debating for 6 months adds so much weight. It emphasizes the duration, the effort, the entrenched difficulty of the whole process.
Right.
And that's why the final approval is such a significant, hard-won moment. Without the continuous, you lose that sense of prolonged struggle. A simple had debated, just lists the event, had been debating describes the exhaustion leading up to the final decision.
That structural choice, simple versus continuous, that's where linguistic sophistication really starts to shine.
Because it's not about correctness, is it?
Not at all. It's about selecting the structure that best serves your rhetorical purpose.
And if we can sequence events accurately, the next natural step is to start blending realities. C1 grammar introduces us to mixed conditionals.
Which is essential because, let's be honest, real life and historical analysis, they rarely fit neatly into the simple type 1, type 2, or type 3 boxes.
Never. The world is too messy for single-type conditionals. We are constantly linking different temporal planes.
So the most frequently used one, and arguably the most valuable, is linking type 3, a hypothetical past condition, with type 2, a hypothetical present result.
Okay, so we create a scenario where an unreal, a counterfactual action in the past directly affects an unreal result in the present. The formula is if plus past perfect.
That's the type 3 part.
And then would plus base verb.
The type 2 part.
Exactly.
Give us that classic example.
Okay. If I had taken that initial training course last year, I would be leading the team presentation right now. The past action, not taking the course, is the cause. And the unreal present state, not leading the presentation, is the consequence. This structure allows for incredibly precise analysis of regret or long-term consequences.
It's the difference between saying, I regret not taking the job, and saying, if I had taken the job in 2015, I would be living in New York now, commuting every day.
That's a much more vivid picture.
It is, and the second statement uses that deep structural ability to connect a specific past mistake to a detailed, counterfactual current state. It elevates the analysis far beyond just a simple expression of regret.
And this structural finesse is absolutely mandatory for academic arguments, legal analysis, or any retrospective report where you have to analyze cause and effect across different periods of time.
So to wrap up this section on verb usage, we have to talk about the structure that just screams formality and authority. The subjunctive mood.
Ah, the subjunctive.
Yeah.
This is the structure that gives learners the most pause because it feels almost archaic.
It does feel a bit old-fashioned.
But it is absolutely essential in modern English for formal requests, mandates, demands, or statements of necessity.
It definitely feels archaic because the verb form doesn't change based on the subject, which violates one of the most basic rules of English we all learned.
It does, but it's used in highly formal, typically written communication remains, well, non-negotiable.
So the trick is just remembering the grammar rule in that dependent clause. The verb has to be the base form no matter what the subject is. No haste on the third person singular, and crucially, the verb to be always remains be.
And this structure typically follows verbs of insistence or requirement, like suggest, recommend, demand, insist, propose.
Or after certain adjectives that imply necessity, essential, vital, crucial.
Exactly.
Let's use a clear professional example. In a corporate or governmental policy document, you would never write, "The regulations demand that every department is audited annually."
No, that sounds wrong to a trained ear. The formal requirement removes the time element entirely and just focuses on the mandate itself.
So it must be.
The regulation requires that every department be audited annually. And even if the subject were singular, like he or she, the rule still holds.
Exactly. It is crucial that he present the findings personally, not he presents. So why does that structural oddity persist? What's the point?
It persists precisely because the effect of the subjunctive is to remove that sense of time and shift the focus purely onto the mandate or the inherent necessity of the action. It lends an impartial, highly elevated, and authoritative tone to the statement.
So when a document uses the subjunctive, it's a signal.
It's a huge signal that the statement is absolute, mandatory, and not subject to negotiation or simple opinion.
We've mastered the verb engine. So now let's move to how we build the sentence structure itself. C1 proficiency means you have the ability and I think the confidence to deliberately shift the standard subject-verb-object-word order.
To achieve maximum dramatic effect or formality.
Exactly. We'll start with inverted conditionals.
This technique immediately signals a higher level of discourse. You find it a lot in legal documents or high-level correspondence because you achieve this formal inversion by doing one simple thing. You drop the word if.
It's fascinating. By just omitting a single word, you then have to flip the subject and auxiliary verb, which triggers the formal inversion.
And this is achieved using 3 specific auxiliary verbs at the beginning of the clause: should, were, or had.
Okay, let's start with should.
Should is used for type 1 possibilities in formal instructions, and it implies a slight possibility or a contingency. So compare the functional everyday sentence. If you have any questions, contact us immediately.
Fine. A bit plain, but it works.
It works, but the inverted form, which you would find in a detailed instruction manual or, customer service correspondence, elevates the tone significantly. It becomes, should you require further clarification, please direct your inquiry to the assigned manager.
It sounds so much more professional and accommodating, even though it means the exact same thing.
It really does. Next is were. This is for the type 2 hypothetical situation, which is unreal in the present or future. If I were to accept that position, I would demand a higher salary.
And when you invert it,
that hypothetical condition gets slammed right at the front, adding immense rhetorical weight. Were I to accept that position, I would demand a significantly higher salary.
It puts the focus on the condition being proposed. It gives the statement a very declarative, almost authoritative feel.
It does. And finally, had, for the type 3 unreal past. This is for analyzing mistakes or possibilities that never happen. The functional version is, if the team had followed the original instructions, the project would have been completed on time.
Okay, straightforward.
But the inverted version focuses intensely on the accountability. Had the team followed the original instructions, the project would have been completed on time.
Removing if and starting with had creates this powerful retrospective sense of formal accountability. It's like you're stating the failure of the past action as a matter of objective fact in a report.
And these inverted conditionals are often non-negotiable markers of high formality. Mastering them is crucial for reading between the lines in contracts and official communications.
Now let's look at grammatical inversion as a standalone rhetorical tool. This is the spotlight we talked about.
Right.
This is where we break the expected word order not because of a conditional, but for sheer dramatic effect and emphasis.
And this type of inversion is triggered when you move a negative or restrictive adverbial phrase to the very start of the sentence.
And that movement forces the auxiliary verb to come before the subject, just like we saw in the conditional inversions.
The functional result is profound. It signals to the reader or listener that something highly unusual, significant, or dramatic is about to be revealed. We see this most commonly with phrases like never before, rarely, seldom, and the highly narrative little.
Let's spend some time on that dramatic effect because this is where a good writer becomes a great writer. Take the contrastive example we used earlier. The informative functional sentence is, the committee has rarely seen such strong resistance. Perfectly correct, but maybe a bit dry for a political editorial.
It reports the fact. But the dramatic, inverted form is, Rarely has the committee seen such resistance.
The statement instantly gains this sense of anticipation.
Exactly. The emphasis is on the uniqueness of the event. By front-loading the negative adverb, rarely, you make the listener lean in and wait for the subject and the verb.
And this works with other restrictive adverbs, too, if we use never before.
Never before in the company's history had a CEO resigned on the day of the product launch. The drama is palpable compared to the simple, a CEO had never resigned before.
It's night and day.
The inversion with little is one of my personal favorites for setting up a compelling narrative. It signals dramatic irony or foreshadowing. The simple way is, I knew little about the plot that was unfolding.
Okay.
But the elevated narrative choice is, little did I know that I was walking into the most significant political event of my career.
Ooh, I like that. It sets an immediate tone of narrative twist and suspense. It tells the reader, look closely, because even the narrator was initially unaware of the true gravity of this situation.
Precisely. And finally, we use inversion constantly to emphasize formal prohibitions. You see this in signs, rules, regulations, phrases like under no circumstances, on no account, or in no way.
So instead of a simple warning like, visitors should not enter the restricted area, which is a bit weak,
the elevated legalistic version uses inversion. The serious, definitive statement is, on no account should visitors enter the restricted area. It's non-negotiable, formal, and serious. It elevates the tone from a simple suggestion to an explicit command backed by authority.
So if inversion acts as the rhetorical spotlight, then cleft sentences are the magnifying glass.
Good analogy.
They achieve a different kind of emphasis by literally splitting the core message into two separate clauses, which forces the reader's attention onto one specific piece of information.
They allow you to shift the focus without changing the essential meaning. The first type is the it cleft, which always starts with it is or it was, followed by the piece of information we want to emphasize, the focus, and then a relative clause.
So take the basic sentence. The faulty wiring caused the massive factory fire. If we need to emphasize the cause,
we'll use the it cleft. It was the faulty wiring that caused the factory fire.
That is absolutely indispensable in any formal accident report or technical analysis where you have to clearly identify the critical factor, the agent, the time, the circumstance.
Exactly. If the focus was the time, you could say, it was only late yesterday afternoon that the auditors discovered the discrepancy.
Okay, and then we have what clefs, often called pseudo-clefs.
These typically start with what and are followed by a form of the verb to be. They're immensely useful for emphasizing a need, a priority, or an action.
Which makes them really common in proposals and strategic documents.
They're powerful because they let you set up the topic and then deliver the main point with maximum impact. If your core thought is, the staff desperately need a proper functioning coffee machine, you elevate that thought to emphasize the need.
It becomes,
what the staff desperately need is a proper functioning coffee machine. The what clause sets the stage, and the part after the is delivers the focus.
Or, if you're criticizing a past action, what the previous management failed to realize was the true potential of the Asian market.
That is so much more impactful than just saying the previous management failed to realize. It focuses the listener's ear on the object of the failure.
Before we move on, we absolutely have to clarify one related tool, fronting.
Oh, yes. Good point.
Because for C1 learners, it often gets confused with inversion, even though it achieves a similar goal, which is moving an element to the front for prominence.
That's a crucial distinction that often gets missed. Fronting involves moving an element, a time phrase, an adverbial of place, a contrasted element to the front for prominence, but it does not require that auxiliary verb shift.
So no flipping the subject and verb.
Exactly. If you invert, you flip the subject and the auxiliary. For example, rarely has the committee. But if you front, the subject-verb order remains standard.
So fronting is often used to establish context or conditions or a slightly reflective tone before the main action occurs.
Right. So if the main clause is, the council approved the measure, and you want to front the contrast of context, you'd say, despite the public outcry, the council approved the measure.
Despite the public outcry is prominent at the front, but the subject-verb order, council approved, remains standard.
It changes the rhythm of the sentence, adds weight to the context, and makes the prose feel more dynamic and polished, but without that formal mechanism of inversion.
So both are ways to actively manipulate sentence structure for effect, but inversion is the heavier, more dramatic tool.
Definitely.
We're transitioning now into the structures that are the absolute hallmark of academic, legal, and professional prose. These are the tools that convey maximum precision, conciseness, and authority. We have to start with nominalization.
the cornerstone of scholarly discourse. It sounds complicated, but nominalization is simply the process of turning verbs or adjectives into nouns.
So to discuss becomes discussion.
To implement becomes implementation. Crucial becomes cruciality, though that's less common. It's about creating abstract nouns that embody an action or a concept.
And why is this so critical at the C1 level? Why does it matter?
Because it achieves three things simultaneously: extreme formality, high conciseness, and often a perceived objectivity. When you replace a dynamic verb-based clause with a static noun phrase, you often strip away the subjective human agent.
That depersonalization is a major rhetorical move.
It is. In science or formal reports, the focus should be on the process or the result, not the people doing the action. The grammar helps you accomplish this.
Let's use the contrast again. A dynamic vocal sentence would be, the panel thoroughly discussed the newly collected data. The panel is the clear subject. The verb is the action.
Right. The nominalized formal version removes that dynamic action and makes the event itself the centerpiece, often tightening the prose significantly. It becomes, the panel's discussion of the data was thorough.
Or even more abstractly,
A thorough discussion of the data was necessary. The discussion is now the subject of the sentence.
that slight structural change moving from the committee decided to the committee's decision, it instantly raises the formality level. It treats the action as a standalone, objective concept.
And that's why academic writing is just littered with nominalizations. It's an attempt to elevate findings to universal truths, divorced from the human who discovered them.
This mastery is also about moving past the mechanics of reported speech and becoming an interpreter of the original speaker's intent, not just a relayer of their words.
I like that. An interpreter.
You're conveying the speaker's tone, their purpose, or their emotion, which requires these advanced structural choices.
And while the basic tense backshifts are foundational, C1 speakers have to handle the trickiest structural shift: accurately reporting questions. This is a crucial litmus test for true C1 status.
It's a dead giveaway if a learner still maintains the question immersion in the reported form.
It really is.
If the direct question is, when did the CEO resign? Which uses inversion.
The reported form has to be treated as a statement, not a question. You drop the question mark and you strictly adhere to statement word order. Subject plus verb.
So it becomes, the journalist asked when the CEO had resigned. The subject, CEO, has to come before the verb, had resigned. Ignoring that rule just disrupts the flow and reveals a gap in structural understanding.
We also gain immense efficiency when reporting commands and requests by moving away from clumsy that clauses. The most economical structure is the reporting verb plus object plus the infinitive.
Right. So for the direct command, stop the vehicle immediately, she commanded.
The cleaner C1 structure becomes, she ordered the driver to stop the vehicle immediately. It eliminates redundant elements and is a hallmark of concise, formal reporting.
And this leads directly into the critical point about strategic verb selection. Instead of blandly using the all-purpose said, C1 proficiency demands that you select specialized verbs that precisely convey the speaker's purpose.
And here's the critical architectural requirement. That verb choice dictates the correct grammatical pattern that must follow.
You absolutely have to know if your verb demands a gerund, an infinitive, or a prepositional phrase, and then execute that structure flawlessly.
Let's take suggestions. For suggesting or proposing actions, verbs like recommend, propose, or suggest often lead into a gerund structure. The external consultant recommended implementing the changes immediately.
The structure is verb plus gerund. Clean.
And if the original communication involved criticism, defense, or conflict, you use specific verbs that are often non-negotiably followed by a preposition and then a gerund.
So, for example, the verb accuse must be followed by of.
Always. The lawyer accused his opponent of misleading the jury. If you drop that of, the whole structure collapses. Similarly, insist demands on. The client insisted on seeing the original contract.
And one of the most sophisticated applications is when dealing with past facts or actions that need to be negated or confirmed.
Right. Verbs like deny and admit are non-negotiably followed by a perfect gerund when referring to a past action.
So, for example, if a politician is referring to an action that happened before the denial,
they would say, the politician denied having received the confidential file. Not just denied receiving, but denied having received.
That tiny structural choice shows such a deep command of timing within the reported speech framework. By incorporating this strategic verb variety, you stop being a simple conveyor of words and start acting as a nuanced analyst of the original conversation.
That structural complexity brings us directly to the strategic use of the passive voice. At this level, we use the passive by choice, not by necessity.
It's a tool to achieve specific rhetorical effects rather than just because we don't know who did the action.
And the reasons are always rhetorical. Achieving objectivity, enhancing formality, shifting the focus to the result, or sometimes deliberately obscuring the agent.
And that last one is the infamous tool of evasion, the political passive.
Yes, the classic example, often used by politicians or executives when damage control is necessary. Mistakes were made.
It acknowledges that an error occurred, that a result exists, but without assigning accountability to any specific person. It's a very common rhetorical move to accept fault in the abstract while denying it personally.
On the other hand, the passive is used to achieve objective focus, which is common in science or history. For example, the ancient Roman texts were only discovered by accident in the 20th century.
Who discovered them is irrelevant. The importance lies in the discovery itself.
Exactly. And the most sophisticated passive structures involve reporting verbs. You see this constantly in news and formal attribution when the source is general, vague, or too numerous to name.
There are two main structures here that C1 learners have to command. Structure 1 is the impersonal passive, starting with it.
Right. It is believed that the new regulatory measures will be approved next quarter. This implies a general consensus, a broad source, without naming any specifics.
Okay, and structure 2?
Structure 2 is the personal passive, where the subject of the reported clause moves to the front. And the most advanced form uses the perfect infinitive if the reported action happened in the past.
This shows a profound command of both attribution and timing.
For instance, the former minister is known to have embezzled millions during his tenure. That structure is known, present state of knowledge, to have embezzled past completed action is complex, and it demonstrates total precision in temporal relationships.
Okay, finally in this section, let's tackle advanced modals. Modals are the fine-tuning dial for certainty and possibility.
And C1 requires being able to make educated guesses or deductions about past events with high precision.
This moves far beyond simple may or might. When we have strong evidence, we use high-certainty deduction about the past. This requires must-have plus the past part of credible. The door is wide open and the lights are out. They must have left early.
It's a robust logical conclusion based on observable evidence.
And conversely, high certainty of impossibility uses can't or couldn't have plus the past participle.
He was on video conference with me at that time. He can't have been at the airport. This is a near certain evidence-based rejection of a possibility.
The crucial intellectual and grammatical contrast here is differentiating deduction must have from counterfactual judgment or regret should have. This is where the underlying philosophy of the statement changes entirely.
I'm glad you brought this up. Must have explains what logically did happen or probably happened based on observation. Should have expresses what didn't happen but was desired, expected, or was a moral or logical necessity. The choice carries completely different meanings.
So if I say the auditors looked confused, they must have missed the critical flaw in the accounts, I'm deducting a probable fact.
Right.
But if I say the auditors should have reviewed the supplementary data more closely, I'm expressing regret or criticizing their past action. I'm making a judgment.
The tiny difference in modal choice shifts the entire meaning from probability to judgment. That is linguistic precision.
We have spent a considerable amount of time building this complex grammatical architecture. Now, the final step in C1 mastery is ensuring these structures roll off the tongue naturally.
Making the whole production feel effortless and sophisticated, that is the quest for real fluency.
Fluency, that elusive quality. It's not about speaking fast, it's about sounding natural and effortless. And our source material gives us a brilliant, actionable technique that addresses the physical aspect of language. Shadowing.
Shadowing is a specific technique for imitating native speakers. Basically, you listen to authentic, unsimplified native audio, a podcast, a news report, a TED Talk, and you try to repeat it aloud, either simultaneously or just a split second behind the speaker.
It's challenging because you are forcing your articulatory organs, your mouth, your throat, your tongue, to move at a native speed and rhythm.
You're building muscle memory.
Exactly. You're mimicking not just the words, but the intonation, the melody and pitch of their voice, the rhythm and their sentence stress. You are training the music of the language, not just the notes.
And the recommended sources are excellent for the advanced learner because they are challenging, authentic, and high level. For tackling current events and high-speed delivery, The Daily from the New York Times is fantastic.
Great choice.
For immersive, rhythmic storytelling, hardcore history is perfect. And for nuanced, thought-provoking discussions, Freakonomics, they're all unsimplified English, offering high-quality input.
And while you are shadowing, you are directly tackling the final pronunciation hurdle for advanced learners, connected speech. This is the mechanism by which native speakers naturally run words together, altering sounds or dropping sounds entirely.
We call those changes assimilation or elision. The classic example is what do you want to do? Often becoming what I want to do, but it goes deeper. Didn't you becomes didn't you, or cup of tea becomes cup of tea.
And being able to recognize and reproduce those connected forms will massively improve your comprehension when listening to fast speech, and it will make your own speech sound far more natural. You can have perfect grammar, but if your rhythm and connected speech are off, the fluency sounds forced.
Mastering the music of the language is non-negotiable. Now let's pivot back to language knowledge, vocabulary.
Okay.
At C1, you already have a broad vocabulary. Now the effort shifts entirely to depth and nuance, how well you understand the subtle shades of meaning, and how naturally you integrate them.
And that means we must permanently ditch rote vocabulary lists. The rule for depth is simple. You have to learn words in context, focusing intensely on the company they keep, what we call collocations.
These are the small, often arbitrary pairings that native speakers intuitively know and use. It's the difference between sounding correct and sounding natural.
We say strong coffee, not powerful coffee.
We have a bitter disappointment, not a sour disappointment.
Or, in a business context, we often make a decision, but we take an action. We have a heavy workload, not a big workload. Learning these collocations allows your speech to move on autopilot without conscious word-by-word translation.
And beyond collocation, we need to recognize connotation. This is the emotional or cultural baggage a word carries, often influencing whether your word choice is appropriate for the tone.
Right. Cheap and inexpensive technically mean the same thing, low cost.
But cheap often carries a negative connotation of low quality or shoddy workmanship. Inexpensive maintains a positive or neutral connotation.
Similarly, consider the difference between odor and aroma. Both mean smell.
But odor usually implies something unpleasant, while aroma is associated with food, coffee, or pleasant scents. Choosing the correct word is not just about meaning, it's about tone and intent.
A practical strategy for mastering this depth is thematic vocabulary clusters, creating mental maps of related concepts instead of random lists.
The source provided a fantastic example from the field of business and innovation, where precise terminology is vital. We group related terms like disruptive innovation, scalable model, market saturation, and early adopter.
Let's break that down. Disruptive innovation, for instance, is not just a new idea. It is defined as an innovation that fundamentally alters or creates an entirely new market, often displacing older technology.
Think of how streaming platforms disrupted cable television. You need to know the definition in action.
And scalable model.
That means a business model that can be expanded in terms of growth or scope without a proportional increase in resources. It's all about efficiency of growth. Understanding these clusters allows you to not just understand these terms when they're used by others, but to deploy them confidently and naturally yourself.
Which is key to sounding masterful in a professional context.
Absolutely.
Finally, weaving all these complex ideas, sophisticated structures, and nuanced vocabulary together requires achieving maximum polish and cohesion. We need to move beyond simple, repetitive linking words like so, but, and because, and use sophisticated discourse markers.
When you're introducing a contrast, conceding a point, or signaling a limitation, you need formal terms like nevertheless, consequently, nonetheless, and critically, albeit.
Albeit is highly efficient. It means, although it must be said that, or even though. You can say, the new strategy is fundamentally sound, albeit expensive.
It allows you to efficiently introduce a small, limiting factor without breaking the flow of your main point. It's concise and elegant.
And for clearly establishing a cause, effect, or logical result, we use declarative terms that signal high authority.
Consequently, therefore, thus, and hence. The word consequently clearly establishes that dependent relationship in a way that so just can't. Expenditure increased by 15%. Consequently, we must revise the budget immediately.
C1 grammar structurally rewards efficiency, and we can optimize our linguistic code using ellipsis and substitution.
Ellipsis is the art of omission-deleting words that are already understood from the context to improve conciseness.
We often use ellipsis after auxiliary verbs to avoid repeating the main verb. If someone asks, "Did you receive the updated memo regarding the restructuring?" you simply say, "No, I didn't."
The rest of the verb phrase is silently understood. It stops the conversation from sounding wooden and repetitive.
And substitution works alongside this, replacing a previously mentioned verb phrase with a shorter stand-in phrase, often using do so.
The client requested that we submit the final invoice by Friday, and we have already arranged to do so. You avoid having to repeat the whole long verb phrase, submit the final invoice by Friday.
Then there's the matter of parallelism, which is crucial for rhetorical power, clarity, and reading rhythm.
When you list elements, connect clauses, or structure arguments, they must all share the exact same grammatical structure.
If one element is a gerund, they must all be gerunds. If one is an infinitive, all must be infinitives. This ensures maximum rhetorical impact and prevents the reader or listener from stumbling.
For example, the job requires analyzing market trends, developing strategic partnerships, and managing client relations. That structure makes the list feel complete, balanced, and authoritative.
Moving to the process of writing and refinement. The best advice for C1 writing is to edit ruthlessly. Do not fall in love with your first draft.
You must be your own toughest critic, willing to cut, rewrite, and rearrange for conciseness and impact.
The sources highlight several techniques for this critical editing stage, starting with focusing intensely on sentence variety, mixing short, sharp statements with complex, subordinated clauses. You must also maintain a consistent, appropriate tone and ensure that each paragraph begins with a strong, focused topic sentence.
To illustrate the necessity of this ruthless editing, let's compare a basic draft to a C1 polished draft. The basic version, full of choppy sentences, might sound like, many people think social media is bad. It makes people feel sad. They compare themselves a lot, and this causes anxiety.
Functionally clear, but very low level.
The much improved C1 version utilizes those complex structures we discussed: nominalization, sophisticated linking devices, subordination to achieve conciseness and flow.
It becomes, social media can negatively impact mental health by encouraging constant comparison, which often leads to feelings of inadequacy and anxiety.
It's one smooth, integrated statement using noun phrases like constant comparison and feelings of inadequacy. The C1 version replaces the simple verbs with noun phrases linked by sophisticated verbs. This is the structural leap we are discussing.
Finally, we must acknowledge the difficulty of cultural fluency in idiomatic language, even at the C1 level. To truly sound exceptional, you need to understand not only the meaning of idioms, but also the specific contexts, formal or informal, where they're appropriate.
You need the cultural database to match the grammatical database. If you overuse an idiom, it sounds forced. If you use the wrong idiom, it sounds awkward.
2 examples from the sources are key for high-level understanding. First, bite the bullet.
This means to face a difficult or unpleasant situation with courage and fortitude because it's necessary.
For instance, I didn't want to submit the report on time because of the critical feedback it contained, but I had to bite the bullet. It's appropriate in a professional, slightly informal context.
And the second, the ball is in your court. This means it is now your turn to make a decision or take action. It's a very common phrase in negotiations or project management.
We have provided all the data required for the final decision. The ball is now in your court.
Understanding and strategically deploying these idioms adds that final layer of authenticity to your speech.
We have covered a vast amount of ground in this deep dive, from the microscopic precision of the subjunctive mood and advanced modals to the macroscopic rhetorical power of inversion and nominalization.
And we also looked at the physical requirements of fluency through shadowing and the intellectual demands of vocabulary depth.
It is a lot of complex architecture to digest, but the key to C1 mastery, as with any advanced discipline, is consistency.
It's everything. And the source material outlines a practical daily routine, a linguistic workout, if you will, that integrates all these demanding elements into a sustainable practice.
They suggest a daily C1 English routine, 15 minutes reading high-level news aloud, focusing on that intonation and rhythm.
10 minutes working on your vocabulary notebook, specifically targeting thematic clusters and collocations, and 20 minutes shadowing authentic podcasts to nail the rhythm and connected speech.
Additionally, 15 minutes writing structured journal entries, forcing the use of those sophisticated structures we discussed, and crucially, 15 minutes of live speaking practice.
Perhaps using a language exchange partner where you intentionally try to deploy one of these new rhetorical tools. This consistency is the only engine that breaks through that proficiency ceiling.
Absolutely. Reaching C1 proficiency is not the finish line. It's just the beginning of true linguistic refinement. The journey now is about constant attention to those tiny structural details that make all the difference, challenging your output, and only seeking high-quality, sophisticated input.
And I think we can end with that core philosophical takeaway that summarizes our mission today perfectly. Fluency isn't about speaking faster, it's about speaking better.
It's about quality, precision, and architectural elegance over sheer speed.
It is so true.
So as you continue your English language journey, we want to leave you with one final active pursuit challenge.
Okay.
The next time you consume any sophisticated English media, a major editorial, a financial report, a legal document, or a high-level TED Talk, challenge yourself to actively look for and try to spot 5 examples of grammatical inversion, or 5 examples of nominalization, or 5 complex reported speech structures.
Look for that grammatical architecture hiding just beneath the surface of the ideas. Notice how those structures create emphasis, formality, and conciseness, and then the crucial final step. Try to consciously replicate that effect in your next important piece of writing or your next high-stakes conversation.
That active pursuit of the underlying structure is the path to achieving true, exceptional C2 mastery.
That's our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us, and keep practicing these advanced architectural tools.
We'll see you next time.